going to move on to Jody now. We'd like to hear from you. And first question, can you share what life was like before you contracted COVID-19?
Yeah, it was. My life has always been hectic, but I've never had really any health, knock on wood, issues. No underlying conditions. I have a thyroid problem. I've had all my life. It's kind of a hereditary problem, and that was the only thing that I had like growing up, and even when I was kind of before COVID. I worked at the Courier Journal for 20 years. Hi, Debbie. I see you there. I know you're out there. And then in 2012, I left and went on my own to do some other work. I now work for 24/7 Sports, and I run a website that covers University of Louisville all athletics at the University of Louisville. I do and have done for a few years U of L basketball and football on the radio on the radio network. I do some ACC network stuff to where I broadcast Louisville field hockey and baseball and basketball and other things. So just a lot of different things media wise and a lot of different things in sports wise here. In town. Have been doing it all my life here in town, and that's kind of me in a nutshell. Sports and Louisville and the University of Louisville. But again, before all this happened, really no health issues at all. Just a thyroid condition. And like I said, I've had that since I was real young.
Well, tell us about when you first learned you had the virus and what happened afterwards.
Well, it's nothing's funny, obviously, with the virus, but I do have to laugh whenever you show those the charts and that. I'm at the very beginning, and most of the time now it doesn't even show me. We're so far away from there. I was actually at the ACC tournament in Greensboro doing radio. Well, we didn't do radio because the games got canceled, but I was there with the Louisville basketball team when everything got shut down on March 20th. In the college basketball world, and I was on the actual plane with the team. So we flew back on Friday morning. And then it was the next Wednesday, it was March 25th. I remember we had gone to visit my wife, my mom, my wife and two kids had gone to visit my mom. We were out in the driveway. We were already socially distancing and trying to do things, with what everybody was telling us kind of how to do things. And I came home and I felt chilled. I felt weird, and my wife immediately was like, "You go in there, we're going out here, and we're going to quarantine from you just in case." And for about 4 or 5 days, I guess I had a fever. It was off and on. I was in contact with my doctors, and I wasn't showing all the symptoms at the time that were COVID. It was a lot of other things, and my doctor was like, I don't know that, at that time, I don't know that you have it. I don't know that we need to test you, kind of thing. And come around, it was like 7 days later. I think it was April 1st on a Wednesday night, and I just felt terrible. And over the night, I remember sneezing at one point, and like it felt like every bone in my body was going to break. The next morning, it was a Thursday morning. My wife came to check on me in our room where I was quarantined, and I said, I can't catch my breath. I can't stop coughing, and I just feel terrible. So she said, "Okay, let's call the EMS," and she did. And when the EMS got here, they asked her, can he come down? And I'll never forget the moment I tried to get out of my bed, and I couldn't. I couldn't go any further. And so they got in their hazmat suits and came up and took me out. And when they took me out, I had a high fever, and my oxygen level was really, really low. And they were like, "Okay, we'll get you out of here," and they did. And I went to the hospital right then. I was on the ventilator the next morning, on a Friday morning. They had put me, they did some tests or did everything and had done the COVID test. And Friday morning, I didn't even know. I mean, I knew I had COVID at the time, but I didn't know for sure that the test had come back. And I don't think it did come back until after I was on the ventilator. But they put me on the ventilator on Friday morning. And the next thing I remember was the next Wednesday night, late Wednesday night. It was kind of stormy outside. I woke up. I was still on the ventilator. I was still strapped down and had it going. And Then the next morning on that Thursday morning, they took me off the ventilator, and then it was I guess a week and 2 days that I was in the hospital. So that's kind of my at least experience with it. So um, I was I initially showed symptoms on March 25th of 2020 and got out of the hospital on April 15th of 2020.
Wow, another long story there. How has COVID changed your life since April of 2020?
You know, I'm very fortunate in the fact that my lungs are fine. I knock on wood every time I say that, just because I guess we never really know for sure down the road. But my breathing is fine. My lungs are fine. Every the couple times I have had a chest X-ray or they look, I always kind of you know to catch my breath for a second, say please, just I just want that picture to show that it's fine, and I feel good in that capacity. It's crazy because I go about my everyday life. It was probably, I guess, probably uh, July of 2020 when I really felt like I could, July or August of 2020 when I felt like I was getting back to myself. By the end of that year, I was doing pretty much everything that I could have done before. And now I do, my hectic lifestyle. I'm back at, all the work, all the things that I do with two kids and family and everybody, around me. So I'm back to that, but it's just there's days when like Christmas morning was a perfect example. I woke up Christmas morning and I just didn't feel right. And, I had a dizzy spell that morning about, 11 or 12 o'clock that afternoon. And that one only lasted for a few minutes. I have them every now and then. It's kind of lightheadedness. I kind of feel, a little dizzy, a little disoriented. And, everything checks out fine with me. My heart's checked out fine. My lungs have checked out fine. Everything, every doctor that I've gone to, it seems like I'm healthy. I'm good. And there's just little things that I feel I don't feel all the time, and not, fortunately for me, I don't feel it as often as I did maybe a year ago. But there are just things that I can just tell I'm not myself. And again, it doesn't affect my everyday life, which is great for me, and it's great for my family and the people that are around me. But it's still there, and at this point, I'm very fortunate that I'm alive. Being that early in the process, when I had it, we didn't know as much. You guys didn't know as much of as what we do now, and that makes me feel even more fortunate than I would, I think, because of the fact of that I did have it so early, and there were so many people trying to figure out things that it was. A funny little aside story of mine is the doctor that I had, who was taking care of me when I got to the hospital, had just come back from a quarantine where she and her husband had COVID. And so they were like literally one of the very first cases in Louisville to have it. And I know she had told me, she said, I spent my quarantine learning on what I was going to be treating when I went back. And, those kind of, that made me feel good. I don't know that I felt great at that time, but it did make me feel good. And so, yeah, so I live my life, and I haven't really, had a whole lot of things that have affected my day to day life, but I still feel it a lot.
I'm glad to hear you continue to feel better every day. I know it's been a long 2-year journey there. So you decided to get vaccinated as well. Can you tell us why?
Well, I think for me, it was a number of things. And for me, it was very easy. My wife and I, my wife and I both got vaccinated at the same time. Both of my kids have now been vaccinated. Actually, my daughter just got her booster recently. We've all got both shots and have been boosted. To me, it was pretty easy because I remember thinking back. Um, I remember thinking back to the day when I couldn't get out of bed. When I couldn't, I had to have the EMS help me to get out of bed and help me to get on my road to getting better from having COVID. I also remember, just thinking about my family and close friends, and laying in the hospital that first day, and laying in the hospital for 12 hours when I was on a ventilator, and I was coming off the sedation, but yet I was still on the ventilator before they could take it out, and remembering those moments, those thoughts that I had in that time of, I don't want that to happen again. I don't want that to be me again. I don't want that to be someone in my family again. And really, um, it was a pretty easy decision for me when I think about those kind of things, and when I think about that, and I've done other media things. I've had other people ask me, hey, you were a bad case. Why did you do this? And I do tell them that. I mean, um, it's a story. Mine is a story that I do love to share, because it was so early, and because we didn't know a whole lot about the virus at the time, and I feel lucky that I'm alive right now. And if I could do anything to prevent from having to feel that, or having that opportunity to, for the virus to come back into my body again, then I'm going to do it.